Hey guys, Level Cap here, and I'm beginning to get a feeling that the Battlefield 5 closed alpha is actually a really bad representation of what final or finished Battlefield 5 gameplay will be like. This alpha was missing so many features and had numerous bugs that were changing the gameplay in a drastic way. What I just learned today from the Battlefield Bulletin Twitter account is that the 3D spotting feature for the closed alpha, where you would aim down sights and a red icon would appear over your enemies when they were within 1 to 2 degrees of where you're aiming, that was actually a bug. And that was actually one of my first bits of feedback for the alpha, was talking about how getting rid of the 3D spotting system but replacing it with this new auto spotting system was a very weird solution, and it came with all the same issues of the original 3D spotting system, like seeing enemy players through smoke, debris, and particle effects. And so apparently this was a bug, and it's not going to be in the beta version of the game. This is a drastic change, and that means the gameplay from the alpha will be way different. It means that aiming down sights in the distance and seeing targets pop up with their little red icons is no longer going to happen. Does this mean that the gadget that the scout class had that actually does 3D spot will become far more valuable? It's hard to say. Does it mean that combat will be slower and that long distance shooting will be less prevalent because it's not going to involve any sort of 3D spotting at all? Will it be harder to differentiate friend from foe because the automatic red icons won't appear on the enemies when you're aiming down sights towards them? This is a huge change in the actual gameplay, the pacing, the long distance combat, everything. So having a bug of this significance in the alpha and not knowing until now is a big game changer for the way that I'm looking at the final product for Battlefield 5. We already had a bunch of things missing from the alpha and other big bugs, like the inability to join up on squads or play with friends, and play strategically. So that's already a massive change in the way that you would play, and that was something that I had to try and incorporate to my initial feedback with the alpha and sort of take into account that basically 90% of the team play elements that I was used to in Battlefield games were not in this because of that bug. And so I had to sort of incorporate that. But now knowing that the 3D spotting mechanic that was in the alpha was actually just an entire bug altogether, that changes things drastically. And it's very hard for me to actually imagine exactly what the gameplay will be like once this is removed, since it was so integral to the closed alpha. Now, there's definitely a few other things that were affected by bugs or just missing features in the closed alpha. One of them was the ability to drag downed teammates. So rather than having to revive somebody out in the middle of an open field taking fire and knowing you're not going to have an opportunity to finish your revive animation before you're shot, you will be able to drag down teammates into better cover. I don't know how fast this is going to be, how effective it's going to be, but it'll clearly change up the general revive mechanic. So it's hard to get a good grasp from the alpha what reviving will be like in the final game. Also, I find it hard to believe that the current flying mechanics for airplanes and their ability to deal damage to ground targets is going to be final also. It was just so unbelievably ineffective. I imagine there's massive changes coming to air combat between now and hopefully the beta. So I think the beta is actually going to be far more important, far more impactful than we think at this point, because if they can fix squad joining, revive mechanics, the 3D spotting, hopefully update the airplane combat, that could change up how this game plays drastically. So the alpha, if anything, was more of just a demonstration of the engine and some of the new gun mechanics and stuff like that. But the gameplay itself could be vastly different. Now, again, while playing the alpha, I did know that the squad system was broken. It was pretty obvious from the start. Everybody was talking about it. Also, a developer mentioned that the dragging mechanic wasn't working in the alpha and that it would be working in the final version of the game, so we knew that, and I just have to basically assume that the airplane mechanics are not representation of the final mechanics. But in terms of the 3D spotting stuff, everybody was giving feedback on it. It was one of my first criticized features or first talked about features of the alpha, and yet as far as I know, no developers were talking about it, or nobody public or big enough was talking about it for the public to sort of get wind that the 3D spotting system was not there. So now I'm trying to wrap my head around what Battlefield 5 will play like without any of these spotting systems. And to me, it sounds like it's going to be much more close to what a hardcore server of Battlefield is like. Hardcore servers generally turn off 3D spotting altogether. Sometimes they'll turn off mini maps too, but they also have higher or faster time to kill, so people go down in less shots. That's similar to Battlefield 5 to an extent, because a lot of people don't regen their health automatically, so players are running around with like 70% of their full health, and then without any 3D spotting, I think the standard game of Battlefield 5 will be a lot closer to what hardcore gameplay is like in other Battlefield games. So I think hardcore players are really going to rejoice with this news. It's good news for them for sure if you like a more authentic style of gameplay, or realistic in the sense where you don't have a lot of UI elements telling you where the enemies are. Obviously, you'll still have mini maps and spotting flares and that kind of thing, but in terms of 3D spotting, showing you where the enemy is behind particle effects, smoke, foliage, that kind of thing, that will no longer be an element, unless of course the scout uses their 3D spotting tool, which I saw like almost nobody doing during the alpha. So anyway, that just means that the beta is going to be that much more important of a playtest, as I imagine we'll have most of these features implemented. I also imagine it'll be the same map. I know a lot of people want to see a different map, but historically speaking, the alpha and beta have usually been the same maps, and since a lot of people didn't get into the closed alpha, they still haven't played this map, but you've probably seen enough footage of it to the point where you're like, you know what, I'd be cool with a different map compared to this one. Not that I didn't enjoy this map in general, but you know, a change of scenery would be nice. Seeing a different biome for Battlefield in the beta would certainly be nice. But anyway, that's basically it for today's video. What do you guys think about all these changes that are going to be in the beta versus the alpha? How much that's going to actually affect the gameplay, and what you think of the current Battlefield 5 design? As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing out.